welcome to this webinar about compensation. This is a topic that that has fascinated me for a really, really long time, and I couldn't think of a better expert than Greg. Quick introduction of Greg. I'm sure, right, positively, most of you probably know about Greg, but if you don't, Greg is a 45 plus years veteran of the industry. He has founded and operated recruitment companies. He's also an exited founder in the industry. He's also a published author, has written 2 books for the industry. He also runs one of my favorite newsletters called The Savage Truth. And Greg now runs Savage Recruitment Academy, which focuses on training recruiters on various levels, right? Recruiters, managers, CXOs. So training all of them. And he also, works with recruiting businesses, helping them scale, right? And Greg, thank you so much for doing this. I know it's late, it's 8:30 in Australia where you are. So we appreciate you staying up late and doing this for our audience, primarily in Europe.
Yes, thank you, Manan, and welcome everybody. Yes, as I'm chatting, I'm just going to share my screen, and hopefully that will indeed work. And go ahead.
Yeah, a quick housekeeping announcement. This is a very, very comprehensive presentation. We are going to get through that. I'm sure that a whole lot of you will have questions. There is a dedicated question and answer section in Zoom. So whenever you have a question, just pop that into Q&A section, and we have time reserved at the end of the webinar to tackle those questions. Now, this Q&A section will not be part of the recording that will get sent out. So the questions we will do right at the end, but there is a Q&A section, so make sure that you put your questions in the Q&A section of the Zoom. So if you don't know where it is, at the bottom you will see an icon with question mark and Q&A written under it. Okay. All right.
Okay. Good. Thanks very much indeed. Yes, thank you very much. So as you can see by my, that's not a live picture behind me. That is a photograph of Sydney Harbour. And indeed, if you're looking at it now, it would be very dark because it's late at night. But I know most of you are coming from the UK, other parts of the world. The commentary I'll be giving is applicable very much to the UK. I owned and ran a recruitment business there. I spent a lot of time there. I was there a few weeks ago. And these are the issues that we're all facing. So I'm looking forward very much to sharing this with you. It's a topic I'm passionate about because so many people get it so wrong. And it really impacts your ability to scale your business, to retain people and get the best out of them. So let's dive into it. If I can change. Okay, I want to start with some numbers, ratios, and metrics. Sounds nice and dry and boring. It's not. It's the foundation to understanding why you've got to get your compensation right. And the thing to remember is, especially in this world of AI and automation and everything's going to change, and indeed a lot will change, but the recruitment consultant is still by far the biggest cost in every recruitment company, by far. It absorbs almost all your management time, or should. Hiring good people, even in this market, has never been harder. Staff turnover in our industry is a catastrophe, to be honest with you. And the recruiter is the key differentiator. Even when you come to technology, in the end, all the good recruitment companies will have the best technology. Recruiter Flow, for example, great technology to have, but other people will have the technology. So the recruiter is the differentiator, and everything hinges on recruiter success. And so training, different topic, but training those people is key, and rewarding them so that they are A, incentivized, but B, that you create the culture in your business that requires or inspires people to stay. 60 cents out of every dollar that you spend, 50 pence out of every pound, if you like, is spent on salaries. In many cases, more. So it is your one massive leverage point, getting productivity from you. You must have good technology. You must have good marketing. You must have good training. You must have good processes, of course. But the leverage point, the differentiation, is the motivation and productivity of your people. And I'll tell you straight out, Manon mentioned this. I've run recruitment companies for over 40 years and started 3, each of which went to 100 million in turnover. Trust me, other people did the work. And I'm not taking any credit for that, but it allowed me to learn a lot. And I got this wrong so many times. And I learned and learned and learned. And nothing will impact your business profitability more than the relationship between salaries and gross profit generation. And when I use the word gross profit, which I'll use a lot, in the UK, they sometimes use the phrase net fee income. I'll define it for you. Permanent placement fees and net temporary margin. That equals net fee income, and that equals gross profit. And the relationship between that number and your staff salaries, if you show me that relationship, I will know in a second whether your company's making money or not. And you need to know this so you can understand how critical it is to get the levers right. This looks like a very wordy page. These are little metrics, and it's another session. I actually believe in 14 what I call sacred metrics to run your recruitment business. But I'm just going to go through 4, which will help you to understand how important it is to get this right. And a great metric that you should measure every month is your gross profit to staff member ratio. Simply take your total gross profit for the month, divide it by your total staff members. It's a no bullshit productivity measure. Because you see, you can fool yourself. You can say, oh, look, we did 100,000 in gross profit in January, and we did 120 in February, and we did 140 in March. We are growing. And then someone like Neil come along and say, what's your GP to staff member ratio? Because you've actually added more staff and your gross profit per person is going down. You're getting less productive. You're celebrating in the boardroom and getting everyone glasses of champagne because your raw numbers are going up, but it's the ratio that you want. And it's largely going to be impacted by productivity, which is largely going to be impacted by the motivation and skill of the staff. Then the other one is the same one, but you're just dividing gross profit by income producer. Now, income producers usually recruitment consultants, it might be resources. I would include managers who bill. And it's the same calculation, total gross profit, which is permanent placements and net temporary margin, and you divide it by the number of recruiters, and that you should measure monthly. Now, bear in mind, this is where the smoke and mirrors come down. This is where people running companies, even experienced ones, get it wrong. They'll say to me, look, my gross profit per recruiter is going up. And then I'll go back to the previous slide and I'll say, yes, but your gross profit per staff member is going down because you're adding so many peripheral people who are not actually helping the recruiters bill more. And that's the big mistake many make. And then your gross profit multiple, this is a classic measure. Take your total GP divided by your total salaries. And I'm just moving. I've got Manon's face right in front of my... I'm going to move you over there, Manon. I hope you're not offended. That's better. You divide it by salaries and it gives you a number. And what you want, don't worry about the 23 average. That was some data out of Australia. But I would say 2.5 to 3 is what you're looking for. And then, of course, the next one is the gross profit multiple, which is where you take the total GP and you divide it by the number of consultants you've got. And that you want to get 3. So to make, I know I've said a lot of words. Let me just make it clear for you. You take your total gross profit and you want that number to be 3 times your total salaries. And if you can do that, and you're not spending money on a corporate airplane, you will make a good profit. It's hard to do across a team of people, but that's the goal. And so to do that, you've got to look at the billings, the base salaries, and the bonus structure. And of course, that's what we're going to look at. One final measure, this is one people don't look at. Take your total salaries and divide it into your gross profit of everybody. And if that number starts getting above 60%, in other words, if your total salaries for everyone in your company, MD, admin staff, marketing, everybody, and if that gets more than 60, I said 65 there, but anything over 60, I'm getting nervous. And if you get to 65, you won't be making money. And so remember, you could have your consultant numbers looking fabulous, but your company's still not making a profit because the ratios are wrong. Now, this is just an intro to the key thing. And the key thing is you've got to pay people appropriately with the right scaled incentives so that they want to work there. There's a lot of other reasons people need apart from salary, but they want to work there. They feel respected. They can earn more than they thought they could. But that when they make money, by they I mean the recruiters, when they make money, the company makes money. I have seen so many compensation plans where the more the recruiters make, the less the company makes. And that is obviously dysfunctional. We want those things going up in sync. Nor do you want the company making all the money and the recruiters working slavishly for no good returns. You won't keep your staff, and it's not morally right either, but it just won't work. So I'm going to go through the classic errors, and let me say to you, I might take on a lecturing tone, but forgive me because I have made mistakes. But this is learnt in the field of play. This is learned at the cold face because I got it wrong. And I'll say to you at the very outset, there are some disastrous compensation schemes. There are some that are flawed. And there are some that are much better than others. And obviously, that's what I'm going to share with you today. But even the best ones have pros and cons. It's not a perfect science. Okay? So here we go. The first thing I'd say to you is, and this is where there's a lot of hypocrisy in our industry, or if that's too strong a word, a lot of misalignment might be more fair. The reward scheme must align with your ethos. So if your ethos is we are a collaborative, sharing, teamwork type environment, then you've got to have a bonus plan that reflects that and reinforces that behavior. But I see so many times people say that's what we are, and you read their website and it says that's what we are, but you go into the place and people are fighting each other, cat and dog, and stabbing each other in the back. And I'm not exaggerating. Those of you in recruitment a long time know that kind of behavior certainly has existed in the past and probably still does. So you've got to ask yourself, what type of company are you trying to create? And you might say, well, a profitable one. I get it. Absolutely. But is it a collaborative one? Or do you like a dog-eat-dog world? You know, you eat what you kill. Every man and woman for him or herself might be your philosophy. And plenty of companies operate on that basis. And some people, I mean, when I got into recruitment as a long time ago, when I went to the UK and I worked for a recruitment company, Oxford Circus in London, they actively, the leadership, actively got consultants to compete with each other. And they loved the officers fighting with each other because they believed it drove activity and competitiveness. And maybe it did, but at what cost? The cost was always the candidates and clients lost out because people were operating in their own self-interest. Also, if you're a recruiter being offered a wonderful reward scheme, think carefully about whether that reward scheme plays into your view of how companies should operate. You want to join a great teamwork and collaborative environment, we'll make sure the reward scheme complements that. And this one's going to sound really obvious, but it's chiefs the mistakes people make. You've got to reward people for what you want them to do. And you might say, well, that's obvious, Greg. We want them to build. But yeah, it's more subtle than that. The mistake I've seen so many times, and I saw it in the UK recently, they promote people from consultant to manager to like a team leader. I'm running 2 people. And they say to that person, congratulations, you've now a team leader. And we want you to manage these 2 recruiters. And you've got to spend time helping them bill. You've also got to bill, and we're only rewarding you on your billings. So How can that possibly work? Were you saying to someone, we want you to spend time investing in these people? Even the person with the best will and the desire in the world will gravitate back to their own work because that's how they get paid. So you've got to think to yourself, how do we want these people to behave? What do we want them to do? And then reward them accordingly. And that, when the rubber hits the road, is when you work out whether do people in your company get rewarded for filling the job, or do they get rewarded for providing a candidate? Or is it 50-50? And what happens if I bring in a job and I give it to Manon and he fills it? Well, we want you bringing in jobs, Greg, but if I get no reward for giving it to Manon, is that logical? So you must always reward people for what you want them to do. And the way job performance is measured must be reflected in the way a recruiter is paid. And now the base salary. In most countries, you legally, well, in many countries, you legally have to pay someone a base salary unless it's a complete commissions-only scheme. And I saw, in that post-COVID boom, you know what happened, don't you? We had COVID, that was terrible. Then recruitment boomed for 2 years in Australia and in the UK, probably across the world. And recruitment companies couldn't find recruiters. And to hire them, they threw giant bases at them. And little junior recruiters, I mean, little, they weren't little physically, but young junior recruiters with a year's experience who are on 60,000, I'll talk Australian terms, suddenly got offered 70, and then 80, and then 85, and then 90. And then the market fell, and they couldn't bill anything. And the companies were stuck with these massive inflated base salaries. So I like what I call the Goldilocks base. Goldilocks, she tried the porridge, a little hot, a little cold. I like a base salary that's high enough to be fair and attractive, but not so high that it means that people don't have the incentive to do the work that will take their salary to an attractive level. But also from a corporate point of view, if you have base salaries too high and the billings fall for whatever reason, could be the market, it could be consultants' motivation, you'll be caught at the crossroads of a high fixed cost and mediocre productivity, and your profit will plummet. You'll go straight into loss. And all those ratios I showed you before will start to tell you this is what's happening. So you need a balance. And this is the biggest mistake I've learned. There's so many. Over-rewarding mediocre performance. It's a disaster. And what happens there is when the commission kicks in too soon. So someone's being paid, let's take Australia. I'll just take this. They're being paid $85,000 a year base salary. That's what a qualified accountant earns, right? That is a good base salary. You're not going to be rich. With the cost of living, it's not going to be easy necessarily, but it's a livable wage. Then the recruitment companies pays bonuses on the very first dollar that the person bills. It might only be small, might be 15%, but it's kicking in too soon. I mean, what's the base salary for? That's for doing your job well. A bonus, you look up what the word bonus means. It means for achievement. And thresholds are too low. Now, threshold, you'll probably know what that means, but if you don't, that is where the company says you need to bill a certain amount, basically to cover your base salary, and above that, you'll earn commission. But if the threshold's too low, it breeds a kind of a see monkey, feed monkey mentality. It's like people won't do anything unless you give them a reward. And I like to tell, well, hold on, what's the base for? That's for doing a very, very good job. Thanks very much. And then we will reward you well for achievement. So you don't reward mediocre performance. By the way, I'm coming at this from the angle of salaries. But at the same time, if you're doing this and creating this commission structure, you need to be creating a training, mentoring, and development structure which allows your people to thrive, right? You want them to get massive bonus checks. Who gets checks? How old is this guy? But you want them to get massive bonuses, because if the structure's right, the company will be making money when your people earn massive bonuses. But if the people are earning massive bonuses on mediocre results, you will lose money, or you won't make any. Now, remember, this sounds like the Greg Savage Show, and I'm doing my best to dominate everything, but this is brought to you by Recruiter Flow, so thank you very much to them. we appreciate that they are making these sorts of efforts to help their customers and prospects. Now, I want to introduce. I haven't done what I said I was going to do. I wanted to throw it over to Manon to see what he's thought of what I've said so far and whether he has any questions or commentary on that.
No, this is perfect. Thank you so much, Greg. One of the reasons that we wanted to get an expert like Greg to do this, because we see a lot of our founders, right, our customers make this mistake. There are just way too many examples to count. And as a founder in SaaS industry, right, like a lot of this information is so easily accessible, publicly available, right? Like what should we spend on sales? What should we spend on R&D as a percentage of our revenue and stuff like that? But those kind of benchmarks, that kind of intelligence does not really exist, right? Like, so those who've been in the industry, right, like know this really, really well, but others, right, like might not. And even others, right, like we've seen them make so many mistakes so many times, right? Like that's the reason that we wanted to do this. That's number one. And number two, right, like, so you see a lot of customers struggle with this, right? Like you are a fantastic recruiter yourself. You started a recruiting business. You got to, a certain level of revenue. You are comfortable. You are doing well. Brilliant, right? Like, but that's where 80% of the businesses stay, right? Like in this industry, right? Like there is only a very small number of businesses that scale. And the biggest problem with scaling is, right, like Greg started a business. He's a fantastic recruiter. He's billing $1 million a year. Brilliant. How does he find the next Greg and then the next Greg and then the next Greg and do it 100 times over? That's very difficult to do. And keep those Gregs with him, right? Like, this presentation is going to be a formula for you to, hire those Gregs and retain those Gregs for yourself, right? Like, so, and yeah, so there are going to be a lot of concepts that a lot of ratios, a lot of numbers that you might have not heard, you might not have even thought about it. But this is really, really good stuff that's going to come out of years and years of experience. And these are the kind of ratios that define the quality of your business, right? Like, so always as a founder, you should always keep asking yourself this question, right? Like, I'm billing $1 million a year. My competitor is also billing $1 million a year. But when somebody comes and values both of these businesses, right, one business is going to be valued much better than the other. And what's going to determine that value is ratios like these, right? Like the matrix like this. And that's why this is critical for you to figure out your scaling.
This is 100% true. And for you in the UK, I can give you a couple of stats. 77% there are 30,000 recruitment companies in the UK. So if you're feeling the competition's hard, you're right. On the other hand, the billings in the UK on our industry is £43 billion spent on recruitment agencies. So there's quite a bit to go around. But despite that, 77% of those 30,000 recruitment companies have annual sales of £1 million or less. And 79% have less than 10 staff. So it is an industry of micro businesses. And as Manon said, it's because, look, some people, if you choose to have a lifestyle business, you and one other sitting in a room billing, you can make a very good living, but you're never going to build an asset. There's nothing to sell. And if that's what you want, that's totally fine. There's nothing, not a judgment. But if you want to, many times people do want to scale, but they don't know how. The other thing I'll say is those ratios I mentioned, on my blog, it's called The Savage Truth, but go to gregsavage.com.au and search for the blog called 14 Sacred Metrics, and I've spelt them all out there. And on my academy, I have a whole masterclass on it, but the blog's free, just go there. Now, I want to introduce to you, Manon, I'll throw back to you in a few slides' time because we need your input, and I know I promised that I'd bring you in earlier, but I got carried away, as I always do. So the cost of seat. Now, this is an important thing. I would like you, when you leave, if you're an owner of a recruitment company, to go straight back to your computer, bring out your P&L and calculate your cost of seat. Because if you don't understand your cost of seat, you will make mistakes on your salary and compensation plan. And the cost of seat is the annual cost, on average, of each income producer, consultant, recruiter, not including their salary. Not including their salary. It's their share of the other costs. And the way that you would calculate that is you'd go to your P&L, annual, preferably, for the whole company or a branch or a unit. You'll go down to the bottom of the P&L just before the operating profit line, and you'll see annual expenses. Take that number and subtract from it the salaries of the recruiters. That's all you do. There's the number. I'll take the salaries of the recruiters away. Leave the salaries of the manager in and of the support staff, because they only exist in your company because of the recruiters. They are the infrastructure. And then the number you've got left, divided by the number of income producers. And here is a prediction. It's going to be 80 to 100,000 Australian dollars a year, or 40 to 50,000 pounds. If you are a company of any substance, if there's only two of you in a room, clearly you won't have those on costs. But if you're a full corporation, and I don't mean necessarily that big, even 15 people, and if I'm wrong, send me an email. Now, I've been saying that for 25 years, because I've been giving training for longer than that, and I've never received an email. Now, so the real cost, and it's in Australian dollars, it doesn't matter. You can just drop in your local currency. Let's say the base salary is 90,000, which would be normal in Australia. Then there are direct on costs. In our country, that's workers' compensation, insurance, superannuation. You might have a pension. There's payroll tax we have. And that's a cost for every employer on every employee. It's 16%. So that's another 14,400. And the cost of seat is 100,000. I've just explained that to you. That means the cost of an income producer, a recruitment consultant, before they have produced $1 of return is 204,000. And yet I have recruitment managers saying to me, oh, this recruiter, they're not very good. She only billed 140, but I only paid her 90. I'm still making a profit. You are not. You're going backwards. You're going backwards fast because they don't have their structures right and they don't have their productivity management right. So go and calculate your cost of seat and then compare it to what you're paying people and ask yourself a question and factor in what they're billing. Ask yourself the question. Because typically, recruitment companies, if there's 8 recruiters in your company, I'm prepared to bet that 2 of them are high performers, 2 of them are low performers, they're either on the way up or the way out, and 4 of them are mediocre billers. You've been carried by the big billers. But we've got to get our compensation right. So the other thing is, and I'll throw it to you after the slide, Manon, if you'd like to comment on anything, but I said don't over-reward mediocre performance. Don't under-reward high performance. It's dangerous. If a consultant has billed 3 times their base and above, you can afford to be generous, because if they build 3 times their base, so they're paid 100 and they build 300, there's 100 to go to their base, there's 100 on cost of seat, and there's 100 back to the company. Don't scrimp with your good performance. Above a certain level, show them the money. So if they build 4 times and above, what does it matter if they get 40 or 50% of the fees above? Just take a person on 100 and they bill 500. That's, well, I was going to say common. That's not unusual. It happens. So 100 of the 500 goes to their salary, 100 goes to the cost of seat. You've got 300 left over. You make another 100 because you're only going to reward them above 3 times. You pay them 33% above 3 times. Why don't you pay them 45% above 4 times? It's 45% of the last 100. Yes, it's a big chunk of money, but you've already made $250,000 on that person. Share the love once it's at that level, because it drives high performance and it ensures high performance and it ensures longevity. What most people do is they scrimp at that level and they give people 15% on the first dollar they bill. That's not the right way to run a recruitment company. The other thing is these mistakes I'm talking about. Oh, I will go to you after this one. Your commission structure's got to be straightforward. You don't need to have a calculus degree and a PhD in English literature to understand it. And some of them are like legal documents. They're 5 levels of bonus percentages, and there's if you don't do this and you do that, and it builds distrust in the system, and it stunts effort. It's got to be clear and simple, and people should be able to calculate it on the back of a sort of cigarette pack, as we used to say in the old days, and they should know where they're heading. Manon, do you have any commentary on the stuff so far?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, there is one metric that we like to track here at Recruiter Flow for our sales team, and you should do that for your producers as well, right? Like, so if you see, right, like there is going to be a very lopsided kind of distribution, right? Like, so maybe your top 30-40% of your recruiters are contributing to 60-70% of your revenue, right? Like, so essentially, if you flip that, right, like so 60% of your producers are maybe contributing to about 30-40% of your revenue, right? Like so inevitably what happens is, right, like if you try and be right, like so what you want to do is you want to have your comp structure that is um, the simplest way of thinking about it is that you want to have it focused on rewarding and retaining those top 30-40% of the people, right? They are the ones who are going to help you scale. They are the ones who are going to help you take your business to the next trajectory. And you don't want their, basically their income at a level, right, like where they start thinking, you know what, right, like I'm probably much more better off starting off on my own because I'm doing this really, really well. And am I getting paid enough for it? No, right? Like because somebody else who's not doing so well, right? Like gets paid from all the work that I do, right? Like that's number one. And this is just a very simple way of thinking about comp structures, right? Like keep it focused on your top 30-40% performers. Focus on retaining them. And the second thing is that too complex never works. And this is a mistake that I have made. This is a mistake that we corrected just last quarter, right? Like, so we had a very complex kind of incentive structure. So we went back and asked our account executives, hey, you know what, right? Like if you do this, do you know that this is what you get? They said, okay, yeah, you know what, Manan, we don't, there is a lot in that Excel sheet that we have, but we don't remember any of it. Right. So we changed our comp structure. It has been really, really transformational just in one quarter. But we all know recruiters, salespeople, we have very short memories and, we are not going to do very, very complex stuff. Right. Like, so the behavior that you want to reward have a very simple mathematical equation for your people. Right. Like right, like if I do this, this is what I mean, right? Like, and then incentivize the behavior that you want to that you want to promote, right? Like so, and keeping it super simple for your average Joe recruiter is absolutely key because no recruiter, no salesperson is going to remember formulas, is going to remember it's never going to be on the back of their mind when they are doing their day-to-day activities, right? Like, so simplicity is absolutely key, right? Like, so they should know, yeah, I do this, I make this, right? Like, so that's why I want to do more and more of this.
Correct. And I can tell you for a fact that Manon was not saying that people in recruitment are stupid. That is not what he was saying. He was saying, keep it simple. And he's 100% right. Actually, it's an interesting thing. True story. So it's happened a few years ago. I walked into a recruitment company. I'm an advisor, and the manager said, "You see that recruiter over there? Look, that woman. She's only been in our company 3 years, and she joined us straight from retail. And do you know what? She's earning $250,000 a year." And he shook his head, and I'm like, "Right? How much did she bill?" Oh, he said, she billed 750, but she's only 24. She's only 250. I said, "Mate, you want 50 of her? You got this the wrong way around. If she is doing the work and your commission structure is appropriately calibrated, she's earning 250, but you're making 500. And you're sitting here shaking your head." Kevin bollocking. I said, "You really got to, you're saying she's just came out of retail. She's doing one of the hardest jobs known to man consistently billing in a recruitment business, and you are begrudging her earning a third of what she bills. So we've got to get our thinking right. Let's move on. Here's a big one. A lot of commission structures pay monthly. It's like we've got to motivate people monthly. I don't believe in it. I think it breeds, and I'm definitely against the pack. In the UK, I think it's almost always like this. In Australia, it's hitting monthly. And it leads to bad behaviors because you want people to think, at the end of the day, you want people to place people in jobs because that is their job to do it, because it's in the interests of the client, it's in the interests of the candidates, and you want them to focus on doing quality work over the long term and then get rewarded quarterly, which after all is only every 90 days. It's often enough, and they're getting their base. But if you pay people monthly, you will get bad behaviors. You will get people pushing placements through on the last day of the month. You will get people holding placements back so that it goes into the next month because that suits their calculation. You've got to encourage people to take a longer term view. I don't believe in short termism. Yes, I believe in reward. I love that about our industry. I love the fact that, and that's why one of the reasons I like recruitment is that if you work hard and you do well, you will see the reward. And that, by the way, is why there's so many women in recruitment, because unlike a lot of professions, like law and accounting and banking, where men still get paid more for the same job, in recruitment, you bill the most, you pay the most. And okay, the playing field is leveling over the years, but it's still not level. And so I don't believe in monthly commission schemes. I think you should make it quarterly. So something to think about. And then the huge one. Now, when I say threshold, a threshold is a multiplier on the base salary, which is built into your commission structure, which says once you get above that threshold, you earn a commission. Now, let's be clear on this. Most recruitment companies do not carry a threshold shortfall forward. And let me explain what I mean, because you may not initially get my language, because it might be different in your country. I'm a recruiter on $80,000 a year. I'm on a quarterly bonus. Good so far. I'm paid 33%, let's say, above 3 times my base. My base in a quarter is 20, so my threshold is 60. 20 times 3 is 60. So the company says, when you get over 60, we will pay you 33% of that as a bonus. So the person bills 100, they get 40,000 over their threshold. They get 33% of that, which is, I don't know what it is. What is it, about 12 grand or something?
13.
And yeah, it's a nice bonus. Yeah. Now, that's all well and good. And we have a beer and we dance in the streets because everyone wins. What happens if they don't get 3 times their base? What happens if they have a quarter which bills 50,000? Clearly, they don't get any bonus. But that shortfall must be carried forward. The bonus, the threshold for the next quarter is 70,000. And the reason for that is, to be absolutely clear, I put it in bold and black and orange. The bonus calculation is you get paid, let's say, 30% above 3 times your annual base. That's the calculation. We just happen to pay it quarterly. Because if you don't do that, I promise you, and if you do that, you'll know this is true. A recruiter has a huge month or a quarter and gets a massive bonus. Hallelujah. Next month they build donut, naught. But they still get their base. You don't carry the threshold forward. You have a colossal month the next month, huge bonus. And at the end of the year, you'll find you paid that person half of what they built. Sorry, you've paid you paid the person half of what they built. And that's a disaster. And that's why you get companies growing their sales and they announce it on LinkedIn. I know, because I'm under the covers in a lot of these places, that they're going backwards in profit because they're not carrying the threshold forward, and promise you, I'm sorry, human beings, and many of them will default to finessing the system. And if they've had a bad quarter and they're nowhere near their threshold and they make a placement in the last week, I promise you that person's going to start in the next quarter because it's going to get into the quarter where they earn bonuses. The other thing I would do is I would pay commissions on collected fees, not invoices. You've got to have the money to pay the money. It's better for cash flow, but it gets the business and the recruiters aligned on what a good client is. And a good client is many, many things. But one of the things a good client is that they pay within the terms. And I've seen people paying massive bonuses on money that's not being collected. Then the client's defaulted. But the recruiter's not giving the money back. And then the company loses on all fronts. Manon, quick comment from you, and then I'll do some compensation structures.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is where incentives, engineering incentives alignment come into the picture, right? Like, and we even at Recruiter Flow, right? Like we see this behavior from our sales team, right? Like, so if let's say as an account executive, you're not having a great quarter. So, right, like typically October to December quarter is a very slow quarter. But if there is some account which is ready to sign, let's say in the week after the Christmas, but in the month of December, if that account executive is not having a great quarter, she knows that she's not going to make the threshold. She will just, she'll just push and make sure that it gets signed in the next quarter. So, and then it's a Q1, it's a new slate, right? Like, and she knows that she's going to get to the threshold. She's going to get to that, her bonuses, right? Like, so, it's not about being a good person or a bad person. It's just, the behavior of your consultants is basically on how you incentivize them, right? Like, and if you don't carry over that shortfall forward, if I'm having a terrible quarter, I know that I'm not going to make that threshold. I am definitely going to push that. If I'm signing anything new in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the quarter, I'm always going to push that forward to the next quarter, which is not great for you, which is not great for the business.
It's not great at all. And in actual fact, those of you listening might think I'm sort of sounding like a penny pincher. Please don't get me wrong. This is hundreds of thousands. If you're a company of 14 or 15 people, this is hundreds of $1,000s a year. Yeah. That if you don't carry thresholds forward, and that could be your entire profit. So it's dysfunctional. Okay, I've got to move on because people are probably going to go and make some placements. But here's a classic healthy perm. Now, please, this is a permanent payment model. It's a model. It's an example. I'm not putting it forward as that you should rush out and implement this in your company. Every company is different. You've got to look at context, etc. But this is a structure which will be fair on the company and incentivize the good burn. A base of 80,000. This is Australian. In your country, it'll be something else. Your bonus will be paid quarterly on collected fees. Your threshold, which is annual, will equate to 3 times your base salary for the quarter. So in this guy's case, or this woman's case, it's 80,000. So a quarter of that is 20 times 3. The threshold is 60,000. So above 60,000 in a quarter, and perhaps in this company, an average placement fee is 10 or 15,000. So that might be 4 or 5 placements in a quarter. And above that, they're going to be in the money, as we say. And there's 2 bonus tiers, just 2. Above 30%, above 60K and below 100, you'll earn 30% of that excess. Between 3 and 5 times, that is. And then above 5 times, and they build 5 times their salary, I'll give them 50%. Because they're rocking and rolling. It's they make a 15 grand placement when they're in that territory. It's 7,000 for them. And you might say, that's a lot. You've already made 5 times the person's salary. You're making so much money that you would be looking absolutely delicious, but it's fair and it's incentivizing. Now, these are the
yeah. So sorry, Greg. I want to come in with one more thing, right? Like, and kind of go back to earlier thing that we discussed, right? Like, you want to design your compensation structure for your, for your top performers, right? Like your top 30, 40% who are probably billing 60, 65% of your total business. And this is a great way of disincentivizing your, if somebody is in the bottom quartile, bottom quartile consistently, right? Like, so they have not made the threshold this quarter. If they have and you carry that forward, right? Like they do not make the threshold in the next quarter, right? Like, so you are creating a natural system where, they know that they are not a good fit for the business that you are running, and will probably get out of the business, right? Like, so again, right, like it kind of builds on the same theme, right? Like you want, so this is part of the same, overall structure, right? Like you want to super incentivize your top performers, and you also want to disincentivize consistent bad performance, right? Like everybody is a human. You can have a bad quarter. You can probably have even two bad quarters, right? Like, but if you have three consistently, you are, it's just not a fit, right? Like, and this structure kind of makes sure that that it is consistent with your policy of retaining your top winners.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Okay, so that took me years to come to this as my best profile of a. Now you can change things. The levers you can change, of course, is the base salary, the threshold. You might say no, 3 times is too much. I want to go 2.5. You might say I'm only going to have one bonus tier, and of course the percentages can be changed. So you can work with that and work out what's fair. But always go back to the cost of seat calculation, because that will tell you whether you've gone off track. Now this is a bit messy, but stay calm. Some considerations now. Some recruiters are permanent only, some are temp only, temp and contract, and some are blended. So you've got to take that into account. Some considerations for a temp or contract biller, I think it needs to be slightly different. Just remember, it's much more expensive to run a temp and contract business. You have to have a payroll person. You've got insurances. You've got compliance. As you get bigger, the temp business is expensive and I nearly said the word dangerous. It's not the word I'm looking for, but it has risk more than the permanent one. And also remember that a permanent recruiter starts on 0 every payday, month or quarter, whereas a temp recruiter has a running start, because if they had 25 contractors out working at the end of the month, they still have 25 on the start of the next month. They've got revenue, annuity revenue, and you need to factor that in. And so I would say that with a temp recruiter, it's more something like you can earn 15% of all gross profit above the step. See, because a permanent consultant's earnings will go high one quarter, and no bonus the next quarter, then a little bonus, then a high one, then no bonus. That's a typical perm. No matter how hard they try, it's going to fluctuate. Whereas if somebody's got up to 25 contractors, it's not going to go to naught. Might go to 23 and then up to 30 and 20. So you've got to factor that in. And I think, again, this is just illustrative. You've got to look at this in the context of your business, maybe 15% above a threshold, and then another 10% above a super threshold. So they might get 25% above the super threshold. But, temp recruiters can typically bill good ones more than good perm recruiters, except at executive search level. And sometimes I've seen I used to have this in one of my companies. I started a company called Recruitment Solutions with 2 other guys many, many years ago. There were 7 of us in a room, and 10 years later, it listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. And the main reason it was able to list as a public company was because we had 1,000 temps being paid. 1,000 a week, right? And the investors loved that because there was annuity revenue. But we actually paid our people as a team in each office. So the temp team worked together and they got a percentage and split between them because they were sharing jobs and people, and it was urgent. And hey, I've got a candidate for you. And that fitted that environment. So you remember what I said, you've got to pay people according to what you want them to do. And we had 10 temp recruiters in the room in Sydney, and we wanted them to fill every job in 15 minutes. And we wanted them to be, as the person was taking the job, I'm not kidding you, there were 4 people calling candidates. And sometimes they filled the job before they put the phone down. Client had the job filled. Thanks. Okay, if you're talking about a manager, and I'm talking about a team leader who bills, I think that person has both an individual target, and they get rewarded for it, and a team target. The individual target needs to be lower because you want them. Remember, I said you've got to pay people according to what you want them to do, and we want this person to bill, but we want them to actually amplify the billings of the people reporting to them. So I think maybe twice their base and 15% above that for the individual target, and then 5% of all gross profit above 3 times for the team. This is just illustrative. Don't go and implement this because I've written that down. It's the structure and the logic and the philosophy. Reward growth for a team leader. Don't reward maintenance. And I do want to make one point, and Alan said this, and I said it. We said the comp plan will drive behavior, but the comp plan has to be in sync with your leadership, your culture, and your training. But a comp plan will not fix bad leadership, bad culture, and lack of training. It's not going to do that. Okay, so you've got to. The comp plan is the cherry on the top. It's the reward, but you've got to create the infrastructure for people to succeed. So I encourage you to invest in your recruiters, and have a coaching ethos. Remember, the investment pays off in the billings, and if your commission structure is right, every dollar they bill.
I think there are a few things that I learned as well. I know this was more focused on recruiting agencies, but a lot of these lessons apply to software companies like us and designing our comp plans, our incentive plans for our sales teams. Greg, really appreciate you doing this late in the evening. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending.